Relying solely on medication to address your child's attentional difficulties is an extremely risky strategy. What happens if there is a shortage of that drug, as has happened in the UK recently? Or your child hits adolescence and suddenly they just refuse to take their medication? I'm not saying don't use medication, but you need to have some other strategies as well. And that's not just as a safeguard or backup, but because your child will really benefit with a toolkit of resources that they can draw on as they enter adulthood and face the daily challenges of life. Now, attentional difficulties are often misunderstood or underappreciated. It's often seen as just something you need to be able to sit still in class and listen to the teacher. And of course that is important, but there is more to it than that. Attentional difficulties underline many developmental problems that children experience. For example, with speech and language. A speech and language therapist once explained to me that if a child can't sit and concentrate on what the adults are saying around them, then they're not able to absorb and repeat the words that are being said to them. And then you end up with speech and language delays and developmental difficulties. It's also important for things like personal care, being able to brush your teeth for long enough or sit at the table and finish all of your food. And as children get older, things like personal hygiene. Now, if you are worried about your child's attentional difficulties, if you think that they're much shorter than the other children developing around them, then ask for a referral to an OT, that's an occupational therapist, and they can help you address some of these issues. Now, at the moment, it can be extremely difficult to get a referral, and if you do get the referral, then you are often on a waiting list. With the NHS, it can be up to a year or even longer sometimes. So your other option is to go private, but obviously not everyone can afford to do that. So if you are finding yourself in this position and are panicking, I want to tell you, don't panic, okay? Because I've got some good news. And that is you can do lots at home, and there's actually lots you can do at school as well to help your child's attentional difficulties. Now, I'm going to give you some tips here, and just a warning, it's going to be a bit of a brain dump. I've got 6 tips and I want to share those with you. Now, if at the end of this you are feeling very overwhelmed by all the information I've just imparted, then I want to offer you 20 minutes free one-to-one coaching with me, and I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below this video, so check that out if this is all feeling a little bit too much. I want to help. Okay, so let's start. Tip 1, deal with the anxiety first. So anxiety will impact our ability to attention. That's for absolutely everybody. So your first step is to deal with anxiety. So you would start by picking your moment. Don't go for your child immediately when they come out of school with some big task that requires lots of attention. They're not going to be managing it because they're probably going to be holding a lot of stress from school. So pick your moment. The next thing is to reduce demands. So don't throw loads of demands on them and then expect them to do a task that requires loads of concentration. A lot of neurodivergent children struggle when they have too many demands put on them. The other thing that you can think about doing is increasing your parental presence. So this is spending time with your child doing something that they want and you give them your undivided attention. I spend 10 minutes every morning with my daughter doing something that she wants. So sometimes we're playing games, sometimes we're doing crafts, sometimes I'm just sitting there and watching her play Roblox. And yes, it can be boring, but it is really important for that parental connection to help them feel safe and secure and lower anxiety. The other thing you need to do to make sure their anxiety is at a manageable level is meet their sensory needs. So this might be engaging them in some heavy lifting activity, anything that pushes and pulls the muscle. Could be something like jumping around on a trampoline. You also need to think about their vestibular system. This is what manages movement. Some kids just need lots of movement. So you might want to do some jumping jacks with them, or put them in a swing and swinging them about for a bit. Also think about oral motor input. So this is basically chewing, sucking. You might want to give them a bagel to chew on when they come out of school, or a smoothie to suck out of a straw. Water from a bottle with a sports lid is also very good. This will all just calm the system down and make them ready for the task that you want them to do. So the next thing you want to do is make sure you have their attention. So the first thing is getting down on their level if they're smaller than you, and ensuring that you have eye contact. Now, if your child struggles with eye contact, do not force them. This is extremely stressful for them. But you might want to say very lightly in a casual way, "Can I just check I've got your attention?" You might also want to think about changing the tone of your voice. When people talk more quietly, it forces us to pay attention because it is harder to hear them. So did you find that you were suddenly leaning in and paying attention more to my video? I hope so. You might also want to think about just changing your voice, making it louder, or saying something silly voice. But be aware that children who have any kind of trauma history may find that their fear response is triggered if you just suddenly and abruptly change your voice to be either too excited or too loud. I discovered this recently with my own daughter. We were out walking down by the Thames and I saw a giant yellow duck, a giant yellow rubber duck. I was super excited, and so I squealed and said, "Oh, it's a giant yellow duck!" And I completely terrified her. She didn't pay any attention to the duck. She was too busy crying. So just be aware of that. You know your child. Think about what is the best way to get their attention. It will be different for every single child. So just think about what works for you. The next point, point 3, is keeping the environment clean, clear and tidy. Now, by clean, I don't mean that you need to get out with your furniture polish and your feather dusters. I just mean that the space shouldn't be cluttered with lots of toys or coloured pencils or books. It needs to be clear, and you need to ask them to do this at school as well, because all those toys and things on their desk are going to cause distractions for them. So have some kind of tidy system, boxes that you can put things in. In my house, what I do is I have a rule that it's one toy in and then you put the toy away before you get another toy out, because my daughter does, because of her attentional difficulty, she will go through toys at an incredible rate, and before you know it, they're absolutely everywhere. And then that, of course, makes the attentional difficulties even worse because the whole place is cluttered. So I know for some of you, you'll be listening to this and going, "Oh my God, I can't do that at all." This may be because of your own neurodivergency. So what I would say is ask for help. If this is a struggle for you, ask for help. It might be that another family member is better at keeping things tidy and ordered than you are. Or maybe ask for a friend or neighbour. You might find this hard to believe, but some people really enjoy decluttering, and I know that because I am one of those people. I just find it really refreshing to have a declutter. So ask for some help if this is a struggle for you. Point 4, take regular movement and brain breaks. So the number of times you will need to do this in, say, an hour is going to be different depending on the age of a child and the amount of attentional deficit that they have. So for some children, it might be that just once every hour is okay, but I would say that's probably the maximum. For other children, it might be much shorter. My daughter, she is 10, but she has quite significant attentional deficit, so she needs a break every 20 minutes. And in those breaks, do something that's just going to let the system unwind a bit. So that might be going for a walk, it might be doing some star jumps, it might be doing some colouring in. Anything that just gives the brain a break for a while. Now, some activities that will help during these brain breaks is any activity that crosses the midline. So the midline is a technical term used by OTs, and it basically describes the midpoint of our body and is any activity that crosses this midpoint. What we have discovered is that this helps to boost brain activity and it will help with concentration. I always think of the brain break as the John Travolta move, so you know, this. So there are lots of activities that you can incorporate into breaks that will help with crossing the midline. You might want to do something like washing up. Now I know this probably won't appeal to older children, but I find that younger children love to help out with a bit of washing up. So you might have your dirty dishes over here and you're putting them here to wash them, and then you're passing them over here to someone else to dry. Getting them involved in this movement is crossing the midline. You also might want to get them washing windows. I used to give my daughter a bucket of water and a paintbrush, and I'd let her paint on windows, fences, shed doors. It's just water, so obviously it will dry when the sun comes out. And she used to love that. And again, it was using these big movements. You might also want to encourage them in that activity to do things like infinity circle, so that's basically the figure 8. Or you can just get them to draw it with their finger in the air, or you could give them a bit of paper and pencil and get them to draw on that. So point 5 is trying to incorporate these crossing the midline activities in their learning. So again, probably something you want to speak to school about unless you're home educating, and these will be thinking about ways that you can incorporate that into your learning setup. So for example, you might want to set up a science experiment where they have to reach from here to here, a bit like with the washing up. So think about where you're setting things up on the table. Going back to that infinity circle, if you're teaching handwriting, maybe occasionally getting them to draw an infinity circle. You could give them lots of different coloured pencils and ask them to do a rainbow infinity circle, so they're just doing it again and again and again. And then maybe you go back to some of your handwriting exercises. You could also incorporate just quick breaks where they do a yoga move. Lots of yoga moves are incorporating both sides of their body. So any activity that's incorporating both sides of the body in movement is a crossing the midline activity. So you might want to do a little bit of reading, stop, do a yoga move, go back to the reading. As I say, you can talk to your school about some of these strategies to help improve concentration. Point 6, my final point, is to find activities that they love. It's quite well documented that children with ADHD can often concentrate for long periods on time if they're interested in it. For example, a computer game. I find my daughter can sit and do crafts for a long time because she just really loves crafts. So think about how you can involve that interest that they have in their learning. You'll need to get a bit creative. For example, can you use crafts to teach phonics? Or can you use computer games to teach maths? I mean, computer games and maths are highly linked, so that should be fairly easy to do. But you'll need to get creative, think about what their interest is, think about how you can incorporate it in their learning. Now, as I said before, this is a lot of information. It might feel very overwhelming, too many things to do. So if you're feeling like that right now, I would like to suggest that you have a look in the description box below, check out that link and sign up for some free one-to-one coaching with me. I'm offering 20 minutes free and we can talk through some of these things and work out what is going to work for your child. So good luck with improving their concentration. What I've just described in that video is called a sensory diet. If you'd like to learn more about exactly what a sensory diet is, I've got this video here that you might find quite helpful.